Hi, my name's Craig Albright, and I have a show at Hudson River Gallery. It's called Wandering Iowa Landscapes. Uh, this year of pandemic has been a pretty challenging one for all of us. I think it's been difficult, but it's also it's been a good thing for many of us. It's kind of allowed us to, or forced us to slow down a little bit in our daily lives. And I have an 11-year-old daughter who did online homeschooling, and we quickly found out that the degree of isolation she was experiencing was kind of taking its toll. After a while, she kind of came up with her own solution for breaking that isolation, and she would ask me daily about going for a drive. She'd be like, "Hey Dad, can we go for a drive?" And thus we started going out and just aimlessly wandering around the Iowa countryside. We would get in the car and pick a direction and just start wandering the back roads of Iowa. The things that we saw on that trip, many of them became the images and the paintings. The daily car trips were a great bonding time for my daughter and I. We were able to talk about life, we'd talk about the pandemic, we'd talk about what life would be after the pandemic. But they are also really wonderful because she would request music, and it was a chance for me to play a bunch of music that I had grown up with, that I loved, music that I thought related to the countryside and to Iowa particularly. And so we do these daily car trips, roaming around, listening to the tunes, talking, and just having a great time. And that really drove the impetus for the show, and where most of my paintings evolved from. My work has changed a bit from my last show. My paintings are definitely more site specific than in the past. I frequently used to just invent landscapes, and they were just born out of an abstract process of composing on a panel. These, I've actually used photographic references more, although I'm trying not to be photorealistic with them. I'm still trying to merge a bit of the abstract composing elements, yet getting specificity that photographs allow. And in particular, I really wanted to capture some of the details of what I would see out there driving down a county road in Iowa somewhere. Some of the images are from the city parks as well here in Iowa City, and I became intrigued with the baseball fields and the yellow protective foam that they had run around the fences, and it made this great graphic element across the landscape that contrasted nicely with all the deep greens. Another element of these things that kind of merged the photography but the visual too is a sense of motion. And I some of the paintings I've really explored moving, and as you would if you're looking out a car window going very fast, and if you were to take a very quick still picture, that it would blur that image. Sometimes I would enhance that, and I even on a few I experimented where I allowed myself to just totally fuzz it out. Probably due to my love of Gerhard Richter and some of the stuff that he's done with his work. Occasionally try to really push that element of movement. Other times make it more subtle. In the past year I stumbled onto a group called Tonalism, and I started following them on Facebook, and they have a web page. And I've always loved the tonalist painters, but that seemed like a natural fit for what I already do, or have been working in, dramatic lighting and these pastoral landscapes and that sort of thing. So tonalism has definitely been kind of a stronger influence in some ways, but I can't let go of the linear abstractions of someone like Diebenkorn, or I guess Gerhard Richter probably is the single most greatest influence, because he would do these highly realistic landscapes. He would do these smeared, blurred paintings. He would do total abstractions, and that's what I admire the most, is that he doesn't just get pinned into one ism, one type of thing. He explores what he wants to explore at that moment, and while I work in a linear fashion and things kind of inform the next thing, I definitely don't want to lock myself into any particular style. Gerhard Richter would definitely be kind of my idol in that regard. But my goal is to not have it just be a static snapshot of a particular place. That being said, I do want my paintings to be recognizable to the point where I went ahead and titled them with the location where many of them were based, so that if someone were to get on Google Maps and go to that location, they would be able to see these areas where these paintings were sourced from. I think the site-specific aspect of the paintings is something that I'm definitely wanting to push more. I think just as a matter of practice and process, I need to get out and actually do plein air painting on location more. These works are all pretty much derived from either photographs or memories of driving through these areas, or a combination of those things. I really do need to get out and paint on location more, and I think that'll be something that I try to do more of. As a discipline, it would enhance my understanding and ability if I were to do more plein air painting, which I hope to do. So, painting rivers and water and lakes and stuff, I guess has been a bit of a new thing for me. It's also been something I did years ago when I was an undergrad student. I used to do a lot of plein air painting, and I went to school at the University of Iowa, and I would go down by the banks of the river there, by the Union, and those railroad bridges and all the bridges in Iowa City. I would paint those frequently. So it's not brand new to me. It's sort of like I'm revisiting it. I think in the past, when I was just inventing landscapes and stuff, I was intentionally avoiding things that were that could become easily melodramatic or cliched a bit. It could become a formula, and I guess I had avoided that kind of thing when I would construct my own landscapes. One painting that's from the bridge, staying on the bridge at Sutliff, by the Sutliff Tavern, looking north, that I'm quite fond of. It sort of, standing there seeing it that day, reminded me of some of the Dutch landscapes that Vermeer and others would do, that this kind of gray with blue skies and water. So I'm fond of that little painting because it reminds me of some of those. And then so water as a subject hasn't really been a conscious thing. It's just it's something that's crept in because I'm working more site specifically. One thing about this show that as I look around and see it up now kind of surprises me, that I wasn't aware while I was working on it, but there are a lot of blue skies in my painting. It wasn't intentional necessarily, but I think it's more the result of my road trips typically being in the early to late afternoons, and the being out in that landscape and seeing that big blue or gray sky, and it's kind of funny to see to me now, because in the old days I would never paint a blue sky, or I would intentionally try to avoid that. I didn't want unicorns and rainbows and stuff in my pictures or something. So it feels a bit of a departure to see all the blue skies, but it works for me, so that's okay. The subtext of my paintings has always been apolitical or not intentionally driving at some bigger message. But those things are there that I think about. I think about climate change. I was thinking about the pandemic. So I don't paint a bunch of landscapes without people in them because I was trying to make a commentary on the pandemic. Or I'm not necessarily trying to document what our landscape looks like now because it might not look that way in 100 years. But those things are definitely on my mind, especially, with having a child and thinking about what her future is going to be. Those things scare me. So I guess what I'm trying to do with these in the biggest sense is capture the experiences that I'm having right now and these things, and let somebody else impart their sense of those things into the work. I think about someone like Giorgio Morandi, who lived through 2 world wars, in a tiny little apartment in Italy, and while all kinds of political and art world changes were happening, he kept painting his dusty little bottles, and he made some of the most profound modern art of the 20th century. So in some way, I use that as my solace in painting my little landscapes. As horrible as the pandemic has been, it's created a wonderful opportunity for us to, as I said, slow down and appreciate what's around us, and for my daughter and I to grow our relationship. It definitely was taxed at times too, because we have a very small house, and my wife and my daughter and I packed in this tiny house 24 hours a day gets kind of tiresome. But again, putting on some tunes on the car and driving around in the countryside was a great solution to that.